Welcome back to Geek News Now live. It's the nowest of Geek News Now. We're here right now. It's happening. And today on Geek News Now live, we're talking all about WandaVision. So if you haven't seen the latest episode or you don't want spoilers, you might want to tune out right now because we're going to be talking all about the latest episode. We're going to be talking all about spoilers, things that we've seen so far, things that might be coming up. So we're going to be all over the place with that. If you don't want to see it, then you shouldn't be here. But hopefully you do want to see it, and so stay. I'm glad to be here. I've got a great panel with me today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting with Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm part of GNN's social media team. A lot of the memes and content that you see on our site, you can also find some different stuff on Twitter and Instagram. Lifelong Geek. I'm pretty hyped to talk about WandaVision, so.
As am I, as are we all. So yes, like Debbie said, you can find all sorts of great memes, news, and videos on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. She's part of the social media team that helps put that out there. All you have to do is search Geek News Now on any of those things, and you'll find us. If you're watching us right now, then you've already found us, so good job. Devin.
Hey, I'm Devin Stewart. I am with the staff writing team over at GNN. If you go on the GNN website, you'll see a lot of articles and a lot of things, and I'm happy to be a part of the team that helps put that content out there for you. Very excited to be here talking about WandaVision. It's kind of a mind trip to go down this road, and I think it's going to be fun to discuss.
I can't wait to talk about it as well. In that, I'll let David tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is David. I'm also part of the writing team. I've been with GNN for over a year now. It's been great, loving every minute of it, and can't wait to start talking some WandaVision.
Absolutely, and Nadine.
Hi, I'm also known as Natasha, and I'm currently working on some artwork for GNN, and I've also been working on a dedicated show on anime and Japanese media, but I do enjoy the Marvel Cinematic Universe quite a bit. So I'm actually really happy to be here to discuss it.
We're glad that you could be here. I'm glad that you could all be here. And we're very happy for everyone that's watching. If you're watching right now on Facebook or Twitter, make sure you get over to our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe because we've got tons of videos that come out there that don't come out anywhere else. And we don't want you to miss out. But let's get right into it. WandaVision. Now, before we get talking about the newest episode specifically about it, I did want to mention some of the things on social media out there on Facebook and Twitter, the complaints that I've seen so far. Now, again, I'm just going to break down why I think these complaints are happening. Almost on every front, it's because they say it's boring. And I think that's because people are used to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as in the movies, as in I sit down and I get a story told to me, and by the time I get up from this sit down, a story has been told. They're expecting the full package story, 3 action scenes, and a hero's journey in one tight package. I don't think they're used to the miniseries, which is you have to wait until the end before you get all that stuff. So I would say that's what I see those complaints as. People just aren't used to this format. What do you guys think about that? What do you think of the complaint that this show is boring? Debbie?
From what I have heard and seen on the internet, a lot of people are expecting the wham bam, thank you ma'am, and explosions and fights and whatnot, and they're kind of disappointed because they're not getting that yet.
Devin, do you think they're just being impatient? Do you think we should wait to judge this until we get?
I think what can be said here is pretty much the same thing we can say about any fandom, which is some of the worst fans are the fans. And what I mean by that is we go into these things with an expectation of what it should be, and especially with things that are, cover comic books that we are beloved and alternate storylines and things like that. And this is new territory. There's elements that, and we can talk about this later, but there's elements that are pulled from different comic book things. But this isn't something that we can go to a comic book DRR and pull off the shelf WandaVision and read what happens, and it's totally new. So I think the fans are at a loss this whole time. Infinity War was nothing new, all this, but WandaVision is different, and I think people aren't ready for different.
I think you're right. That's part of it. It is different. It's a different format. They're not used to it, and so like I said, they're going in thinking if I sit down, I'm in. They're expecting every episode to be basically a mini Marvel movie, where actually the entire season is a longer Marvel is essentially what you get. Like this is the story of like it's taking this long. It's a different format, and I think that is throwing some people off. David, what do you think?
I think a lot of it has to do with what you said. It's a longer format. Instead of releasing a 6-hour movie, we're going to release a mini series and tell each part of the movie a little bit at a time. So what you're dealing with here is we're developing the characters, we're starting to shape the story, and we're basically still in Act 1. And people are upset at that because now we're having to wait, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks before we start getting to the, like Debbie said, the wham bam, thank you, ma'am, the Michael Bay of everything.
Absolutely. So, again, we're it's a different format. It's not just a Marvel movie. So people that are saying like, and also it's not just not a Marvel movie. It's specifically going out of its way to go through time in a certain way that's like, these are how sitcoms were. This is how TV used to be. This is how TV used to be done. They actually used some of the effects, and we're going to talk about that in this episode. But you can see it in those first 2 episodes, like in Bewitched, how they would do things in Bewitched and have stuff fly around. They didn't use like CGI and stuff for that. They kind of went back and did it the way they would have done it there to put that level of realism into what they're actually trying to do, which is create again a world that actually isn't real, which is kind of the neat thing about all of this. But Natasha, what did you think? What do you think about the complaints that it's boring? What do you think about that?
I think as well as the fact that it's literally come straight after like the Marvel like movies. We've had like Endgame, big massive amount of action, and then suddenly we've jumped straight into something that's slower. Like much of you said, everyone's been expecting stuff like fight scenes every episode or massive explosions every 4 seconds. It's like, because like I know people who watch the trailer and it does hint that it's a slower series and you should expect that, but it still has all the action pack that you would get from a Marvel film shown towards the end of the actual trailer. So I think some people jumped in expecting that from like episode 1.
Yep. Yeah, and that's I think that misconception is what's going to be turning some people off to it. But again, I think as long as they stick with it, I think by the end they're going to be happy with the full thing of it, because it is again like it's not every episode is its own story. It is something where you have to watch the whole thing, and I think Andrew actually said it. Show needs to be binged. I think this is definitely a show that if you were to watch it like full all the way through, if you had those all back to back, it would be a better experience than something that's spaced out. But I don't know. That's kind of just my opinion on that. As far as this episode goes, let's talk about it. So color, we entered into color, but we did have the letterbox. So we did the whole episode almost had that, the black bars on the side, which again, going back to that, did you notice that a lot? To me, I went to film school, and so I'm really like, ooh, look at this and look at that and do that kind of stuff really like catches my attention. Did anybody else care about that? Did you guys? The fact that it was like a square and not the full widescreen.
It was shot to a TV aspect of a 1970s show. In fact, I think at the end of the episode, if I'm not mistaken, it panned out to our current 16:9 format.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And actually that's a huge point there. That's a big thing, because when it did that, I was like, first of all, because there's another movie, rarely do movies or shows or anything take advantage of that, but one that did was the one with Tim Allen when he goes into outer space. Oh, and it's
Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest. Yeah. Bam. And it's first shot like that, and then when he actually the spaceship opens its doors, that's when it turns into that, because that's him entering this new world. And they did the same thing in WandaVision, because that widening of the frame there, that means we're not in Wanda's reality that she's made, which is what everything else in that show apparently is, as it would seem. We're now outside of that. And so we see Geraldine like fall down. That's what happens when it widens out. And we see like the billboard for that, the place where they live. So what do you think that means? Is this, who's the bad guy?
Wow. Well, there was an interview that Elizabeth Olsen did where she said that you're not going to know who the bad guy is or if there even is one. I forget who she was talking with. It was an interview I was reading that just this afternoon where she said that, you know, you're not going to know. I don't know that we have a definitive bad guy at the moment. We've certainly seen elements of Sword. We've seen elements of, you know, obviously this is a reality she's created. If you're familiar with the comic books, this has a touch of the House of M storyline in the comic books, where she creates her own alternate reality in grief and I'm not going to spoil the comic book storyline of it because it is slightly different, but she does create her own alternate reality and tries to reshape the universe. Because in the comics, she was an Omega level mutant. She was one of arguably more powerful than Phoenix. So yeah, they didn't quite do that with the MCU, and there's reasons, but I don't know that we have maybe she's her own worst enemy in this.
And I've heard that, well, I don't know if you would consider her a villain, but that she's the villain at this moment because she's the one manipulating everything and everyone, which kind of makes her the bad guy in a sense.
Some of the theories that I've been reading have really been pointing to AIM being involved with it. You had the opening credits of this one where all of the pictures were in the hexagons, like the AIM logo is from the comic book. The AIM characters wear those yellow jumpsuits that look kind of like beekeepers, that we saw in the first one. So honestly, to me, I was looking at it as okay, it's AIM. AIM's doing this, especially because in the first two episodes you had some kind of contact with her saying, "Hey, are you okay? Are you there? Who's doing this to you?" Stuff came in on the radio. But then in this one, when the reality seemed to be revealing itself, especially to like Vision at the end, and he went in to confront Wanda about it, she was calm, cool, and collected, and she was like, "Nope, everything is exactly the way it needs to be." So, is it her? Is it AIM? It's still.
Well, don't forget, we've also now seen at least twice that I've caught Hydra logo.
Yeah.
In episode 2, in the commercial, it's in the watch. When they show the close-up of the guy's watch, the Hydra logo is there. And in this episode, when they have and it's always in the commercials, in the commercial of the woman who's bathing in the bathtub, the bar of soap has the Hydra logo on it. So is that a callback to where Hydra used the Mind Stone to turn them into who they were, going back to Age of Ultron? Or, what's the callback there to Hydra? Do they play an element in this?
And that brings up a good point. When I said, "Who's the villain?" And I said, "We don't know." Again, we don't know exactly what's going on. We know that this reality that we're watching, these TV shows, the sitcom world, it's not real. And we've seen clues that Wanda is in control of it to some degree, to a great degree. Sometimes she's not in control, like when things start going crazy. But she's clearly in control when things like, for instance, when that beekeeper showed up, she said, "No, reverse time," essentially, and they went back to a different point to talk to Vision. That same thing happened in this episode when she was asking Vision about how he felt. And Vision answered honestly and started talking about real stuff, things that the real Vision would say, real worries he would have about being in this fake world. And she was like, "Mm-mm." And then it just went back, and then he was sitcom Vision again. So then it's kind of like, well, so she has control of this, but clearly she's also dealing with a lot of emotional issues. There's a lot. I mean, she just gave birth in this episode and Vision's dead. So like, what is going on? You know, like, what do you guys think about that? Like, what do you think of her giving birth? Like, what do you think? Are the children real? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think they're imaginary, something that she concocted. Because I think that's the way it happened in the comic books too, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I don't think they're real. I could be wrong, but I don't think they are.
I know this is happening. Is it at the end of Endgame or just before? I can't remember. But the fact that it also shows, we'll go into the trailer, not the actual episodes here, an image of when Vision dies. What if everything is being created by the Mind Stone? And that's why she has some control over it. Because Vision is actually there, but he is the Mind Stone.
But that also brings into question a bunch of questions about the Mind Stone. Like, so Captain America had to what? Go take it back. They apparently got it from the Scepters. Did he manage to put it back in the Scepters? That it eventually ends up in Vision's head so that eventually he can get killed so that that timeline stays intact? Because that's the whole thing. So it's like, so if the Mind Stone, it got destroyed and then came back and then Thanos ripped it out of Vision's head. And that's why when the second snap happened, Vision didn't just come back. Because the Mind Stone is still, and he's dead. So, but again, Vision wasn't just the Mind Stone. They mentioned earlier, like, there's different things, there's different ways he could be alive. So this could be some other part of him.
So can I jump the gun with a theory?
Let's hear it.
All right.
Theorize.
So theorizing. Here we go. Jumping the gun a bit with a theory that I've been working on. None of this is real. These are all elements of Wanda's subconscious. Because if you notice something else too, she doesn't have her Sokovian accent that she has in most of the other times that we see her in the movie. This is all playing out inside of her head. The only time she has her Sokovian accent is in this episode when she's singing the Sokovian lullaby to the children. In the House of M storyline, because it came up in the comics, the children did exist and the children die, and that's what causes her to go into the rage that creates the new universe. So I almost wonder, to fully theorize here, Sword is the space counterpart to S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comic books. We know Sword is involved. That's who they are. We've seen their emblem. We've seen their acronym. We know Sword is involved. They're the space emblem version of S.H.I.E.L.D. If this is a real town and she's just created her own reality, we also know that Scarlet Witch is going to show her face in Doctor Strange 2 in the Multiverse of Madness. So, I wonder if we're going to see Doctor Strange show up at some point as the only person who can get through to her in the world that she's in. This multiverse, if you will. She's created this alternate reality. I expect he's going to show up at some point.
I would actually say it's more likely that whatever happens in this will lead to the Multiverse of Madness rather than him coming into this story and like being the one that breaks through to her. I think that the ripple effect of whatever ends up, like the culmination of this story, is what's going to like shoot us kind of into like what
tears the universe a new one.
Essentially, like what we talked about in the comics, how she was an Omega level mutant. She ended the mutants in that. This could be, they could be, switching it around. This brings the mutants into the MCU because we know now it's not just about what works in the story. It's about who owns what. And now Disney does actually own the mutants and the Fantastic Four. And they've hinted about stuff that they're doing, like with Fantastic Four and other things down the line. We haven't seen in their big lineups a mutant movie. Now, is that because there are no mutant movies that they're thinking about doing? Or is it because they don't want to give away when the mutants are going to be introduced?
I've heard that theory. Yeah, I've heard the theory that instead of eliminating the mutants, that she's going to be the one that creates them, which would lead to the reboot of X-Men and
everything. And then they could be, Avengers. You could have a Wolverine fighting alongside an Iron Man. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be Robert Downey Jr. But it would be a different version of these characters, but at least you get it. It's probably.
And a tie-in they could use, and I think, this had been discussed before, is we now had Pietro mentioned for the first time since Age of Ultron. He hasn't even come up, hasn't been mentioned, nothing about Quicksilver this whole time. And now people have said, well, if this Quicksilver is dead, but the X-Men movie version of Quicksilver, which is an entirely different character and arguably an alternate reality version, we could say now, I wonder if he's going to suddenly show up and she's reunited with an alternate reality version of her brother, which would now bring the X-Men and that whole universe in as well, a part of it. And there's a tie-in connection. They could go any direction they want. That's the beauty of the multiverse.
And I think, my thought was that this also may be a way to bring in the Fantastic Four. Because
I think that's what the Multiverse of Madness is going to, that's how they're going to start.
Yeah, because in comics, she works with Reed, or he works with her, I don't know. But, so I just thought maybe that would be another lead-in for the Fantastic Four movie.
And doesn't Reed Richards get mentioned in the MCU at one point? I believe it was Winter Soldier. He's mentioned. They have the Hydra secret.
When he's going down the list.
Yeah, he's scrolling down about. They have him on the building before they kick him off the top of the building, and Falcon catches them. He mentions the people who are mentioned, and Reed Richards is one of them. So it's been mentioned that Reed Richards is real in this.
I didn't remember that they mentioned in there. I'd have to go back. I know they said Stephen Strange, and that was before, but I don't remember necessarily.
Feel like Reed Richards, but maybe not.
Because they didn't own him then. And I think that they wouldn't do that.
Now we're going to have to go back and watch.
Well, we've gotten a little bit off topic. So we're talking about WandaVision. And so again, I think like we were saying that this is going to be the thing that kind of sets up all that, like the domino effect. This is that first big domino. This is the rock thrown into the the pond, and then when Doctor Strange looks up and see the ripples of that pond, he sees like 1,000 different ripples in 1,000 different universes, and he's like, oh no.
Something else that hadn't been discussed in this either is, we've got Loki coming up. And Loki, obviously, he stole the Tesseract, and he has his own timeline thing going on. So, I mean, is that going to play not necessarily into WandaVision, but into the whole expanding of the multiverse thing?
I would guess that that these miniseries are each in their own way going to relate to that in some way. Like, I think this one's going to be more about Multiverse of Madness than, say, the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Like, I don't know what necessarily, and like Loki might be more about this type of thing, because that's more of like an intergalactic stuff. Like, this is like magic. Loki's kind of magic. Falcon and Winter Soldier, I don't know. That's probably going to be more about, I would assume, the legacy of like Captain America.
Well, something else we saw in this episode too that's worth mentioning is they can't get to Wanda. We know she's in a very real place because when she expels, and I just lost the name, but she expels the woman out of the barrier at the end of the episode.
Monica,
thank you. She expelled her out. We see that the sound time, that the town sign, the town sign is real and it's there. So we know this is a real place, but she's erected some kind of barrier that she can control and push people out of. But so clearly this is her trapping herself, burying herself inside a self-preservation and grief, maybe. But
That's a perfect setup for what I was just playing on the screen there. This is actually a music video that I made. You can watch it on our YouTube channel. I obviously can't play it right now because there's some copyrighted stuff involved, but it's all about kind of the stuff that led up to this, the tragedies that she went through, and this is kind of the climax of the video. Where she's losing everything. Like, so Pietro, that was a big deal for her. That was the only person that she had to rely on in the entire world. And then he sacrificed himself. He became a hero, and she lost him then. And then Vision was the one person she came to love after that, like truly actually fall in love with. And then she loses Vision. And so obviously after you go through the one and then the next one, and she was snapped out of existence after that. So she's come back now 5 years later, from the new snap, and without having time to grieve for this. She hasn't had any time to grieve for that situation. So I can definitely see like this whole scenario being some sort of way that she's trying to mentally cope with all that she's been going through. And again, if you bring in the kids into it, we don't know the reality of things, because someone else, one of you mentioned that we know that the things happening in this world aren't real. But at the same time, some of them are, because we know like the helicopter that she picks up that was red when everything else wasn't in color, that had the sword emblem on it. So that could have been like a helicopter that flew into the dome of warped reality, and then she, it got warped by, her reality.
Theory is the banging that they heard against the window, that was actually the helicopter coming in, bringing in Geraldine.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that.
Because the tree that hits the window didn't exist and wasn't there until Vision got up to go look at it, and then suddenly there's a tree banging against the window.
And when she picks up the helicopter, she looks back at the house. So there's a little bit of a connection there. My theory. I don't know.
And that was one of the reasons that they were just the other neighbors or whatever in this episode were suspicious of Geraldine because she doesn't have a house. She's not from here. Y'all ain't from around these parts. I said, go on, get.
It's a lot like
the attitude.
It's a lot like that old Twilight Zone episode, and I'm slipping on the name here, so maybe if you know it, where the whole town is just kind of locked into one place, and they've got this one little kid that's running everything, and if you don't do exactly what the kid says, he'll do something bad to you. He'll ship you to the cornfield, or he turned one guy into a jack-in-the-box because he wouldn't let him listen to Perry Como. So, I mean...
And I think there's some other elements of good God. What was that show again?
Twilight Zone?
Twilight Zone. I couldn't stop thinking Scary Door because I was watching Futurama earlier. The Scary Door. No, okay. So Twilight Zone. I wouldn't be surprised to see more elements of that, because we did see elements of the Twilight Zone, I think, in all of these episodes so far, but definitely in this one with the spinning stuff on the walls. You could say, oh, well, that was just Wanda like losing control of stuff. I was like, yeah, it is. But also think about normal people walking through that, and the raining inside and all this stuff. It's really kind of getting out of control.
Another thought with this too, the MCU is not new to the idea of showing mental illness in some degree. We see it with Iron Man when he develops panic attacks and anxiety after everything with New York in Iron Man 3. We see the PTSD that's involved that he faces. We are not new. We see, what became of Hawkeye after losing all of his family and him becoming Ronin. We are not new to seeing characters deal with extreme stress in extreme ways, manifesting as a type of, and I mean this in the most delicate way possible, a type of mental illness and personalities disorders that exist, and they're being portrayed in a very positive, very accurate way, and they're done justice to. This could be another form of that. All of these are clearly personalities, and I think Vision, when she asked Vision's opinion, I don't think Vision's really there. I think this is all in her head. I think this is a reality she's 100% created for herself, because if otherwise, how could she control time with Vision? Vision isn't actually a living being. in the strictest sense.
I wouldn't say it like, again, that's why it's some form of Vision, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I just wonder if maybe the honesty that Vision showed was her own subconscious honesty coming through of this isn't right, and then just pushing that away and going back to this happy-go-lucky world she lives in.
what were you gonna say, Natasha?
The whole thing that I think, yes, Vision himself isn't there. However, I really do feel how he's acting is a bit more than just imagination. Like, in the clip from the movie, there's an explosion and a shockwave. What's not to say there's a small part of Vision that got into Wanda's head?
And I mean, she was also doing the thing where she was like communicating directly with the stone. Also, again, Vision is not just the stone. They discuss that in the movie. They say, he's partly Jarvis, he's partly Ultron, he's partly, everything else. And he also is partly the stone, but they said so. And that's why when they're talking about removing it, which they almost did, they were like 2 tiny things away from removing it. So who's not to say that his consciousness, which would be a cybernetic consciousness, couldn't exist in some state? Maybe it's not Vision as we knew him. Maybe it's not full-on Vision, but some sort of, just like what's his face in Winter Soldier was like on that old computer. He was on that like 70s computer.
Zoloff.
Yeah. They had like the dials running and the tape going, and he's like, oh yeah, the consciousness. And I was like, you would need an entire football field worth of that stuff to try and make that even plausible. Good God. So yeah, again, we could have Vision in some form, but again, I would agree that it's not 100% Vision, 100%. It's Wanda is definitely in control of whatever's going on in here, because she, again, when he even is concerned, when he speaks up in a real way that threatens the reality she's created, she snaps it back. She turns back the clock and just has him, and then he says something nice and comforting, and just like, oh, well, we'll make it through something sitcom. So it maybe he is there, but he's just under, like, she's so far out of control that like he can't even break through to her. Maybe that's him trying to break through, and she's not even letting him. I mean, so we've talked about how some people don't think the kids are real, or nothing inside is real, anything like that. The next episode, we're still going to have this false reality. How fast do you think these kids are going to grow up? She gave birth in a day. Like, conceived birth day. How fast do you think these kids are going to be growing up?
Well, we're in the 70s sitcom right now. We just finished it. We're moving into the 80s sitcom. They'll be 10 years old in the next episode. That's my theory.
And do you think at what point will we break out of the reality, or when do you think that, like, what episode is like that going to become a direct conflict, that like the real world versus this fake world? We haven't had a real direct conflict yet.
The second to last one of the season. The
Think
last
so?
one will be the last one. Well, think about it. So the first episode, all we got that this wasn't reality, aside from the obvious, way it was shot and what we see as an audience, was at the very, very end, we see a very quick snippet of somebody observing this on a screen with the sword logo. All right. The next episode, we see more where people have tried to successfully reach in more. We got names. Somebody knew it was Wanda contacting her through the radio. This episode, now we have a physical person involved and expelled, and then we see the army. So every single episode, we're seeing more and more push of involvement from Sword, at the very least. So I think it's going to build to the point where near the end, we're going to see her reality start to break down and maybe peak in the second to last episode, but we're going to see more push-in and involvement in the episodes, I think, as we go.
I also feel with how it's going with like each episode's different era of sitcom, it might get to a modern day sitcom, but when it starts tearing down reality, because that will also maybe lead to reminding her of the modern day.
Mm-hmm.
That
I know Paul Bettany, someone was talking about how they liked the mashup of like the new stuff and the old stuff and how it's coming together, and it's kind of messing with his mind. And Paul Bettany replied, he said, "Just wait till the next episode; it's going to blow your mind," or something like that. And so I do think they've been ramping up to something here. And if I had to throw what I think about it is, it's 9 episodes. That's what they're saying. If I were to, you look at that as a 3-act story, essentially, like the first act is basically setting you up to get you kind of used to where you are. The second part of that is like the conflict that starts to happen. And then the third act is the climax and resolution. So I think within the next episode is not just going to be entirely within. I think the end of this episode, they showed us that now for certain there is an outside element at play. I think the next episode might go in between, back and forth. They might have another full episode but I think very soon we're going to see like the people on the outside trying to like talking about what's going on inside. We're going to have actual, you know what I mean? Do you disagree? I'm interested to.
I'm just curious where the rest of the Avengers are right now.
Well, it's just like Spider-Man Far From Home. It's like, oh, don't even ask. Oh, she's over there. And,
that's like any of the movies post the first Avengers movie. It's like you got these big world-threatening things happening, and it's like, well, where are the Avengers at? Why aren't they doing anything?
Well, they all looked at their schedules and coordinated. Well, Peter's in New York this weekend, so we'll just let him handle it. And if anything comes up when I'm there next week, and I'll handle it. And that's just how they divide it up.
So I don't even know what the roster is right now, because we definitely don't have Cap and we definitely don't have Iron Man. So like, who's the leader? Well, that was part of the dilemma. It's like, who's
well, Thor went off with the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's not even around anymore.
Exactly. Yep. The as Guardians of the Galaxy. Gonna be fun.
Shut up and take my money.
I'm definitely still interested in these Marvel stories. I want to know where they're going. And that could be, maybe Loki is actually more going to be setting up that kind of movie. Maybe, these miniseries are each going to be setting up their own type of deal. I would definitely, though, be interested to see Wanda, Scarlet Witch, as an anti-hero or as like a villain for a little while, even if it's like a conflicted, misguided sort of thing. Those are some of my favorite villains. So what do you think? Do you think this could be setting her up to play some sort of villain role in the future in the MCU?
Maybe not villain so much as, like you were saying, kind of an anti-hero, and Devin kind of touched on this too a little bit about the whole mentally we don't know what she's going through. I mean, she watched Vision, she killed Vision, and then she watched him be brought back to life, and then she watched him get killed by Thanos. I mean, it was like twice in the span of 2 minutes that she watched him die, and she was involved in one of them. So to be more of an anti-hero, saying, I've had bad stuff, look, kind of like a Ronan.
Payback is a bitch. Payback. Payback is a bitch. Payback. Payback is a bitch.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it feels good to be bad.
Well, I mean, the same thing happened with Hawkeye. When he switched over to the Ronin thing after his family was snapped away. So, I mean, sure, why not? Why not make Wanda a bad guy?
Well, I think in the comics she kind of goes back and forth, right?
Yeah, but so does Black Widow too. So, where's her kind of crossover?
Well, from a comic book standpoint, the closest equal we have to Scarlet Witch is Phoenix. And when Jean Grey first takes on the Phoenix, there's this massive conflict inside, and Phoenix for a time becomes a bad guy and becomes this villain until basically Phoenix is more or less tamed by Jean and then just kind of becomes the symbiote and a little bit anti-hero, leaning good. And I think we could see the same writing style here with Scarlet. She's broken. She's mentally in a very dark place, as she tries to maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if we see her confront herself.
So, like, confront herself.
Ooh, what if she can? What if she
like Scarlet Witch against Scarlet Witch, all knocked down, dragged out, one for all. Here we go. And I really hope, because I know they've teased it in the trailers, I hope at least one of them is in the classic comic book Scarlet Witch outfit when it happens.
So you're talking like a whole Superman 3 kind of Clark Kent versus Superman, but I'm thinking too what would really put the icing on the cake is if you had one Wanda who's speaking like she does in the movies with the accent and everything, and then the other one speaking with her typical American accent like she has right now. And it's like, oh,
Pulling your punches.
now which one's the good one and which one's the bad one?
And then Vision has to figure it out. Well, what we have seen from oh dear, something's gummed up the works. That was painful. We have seen some trailers that, at least in, I would guess the next episode, just judging by, you said David, you mentioned we just had 70s, we're probably going to the 80s. I remember seeing in the trailer there was a Halloween 80s type episode where they're in their classic costumes with their like Halloween costumes. I would guess that's going to be our next episode. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get a Stranger Things vibe from it, because the vibe that you're actually getting is an 80s vibe, because Stranger Things is just harnessing that. So if you're like, this reminds me of Stranger Things, it reminds you of the 80s.
Does that mean that when we get into the 2000s, we're going to have like a Housewives of Marvel kind of episode, or Vision on The Bachelor? I'm just curious. If
we almost did already have the Housewives episode back in the 50s. I mean, it's basically just the same dang thing, but with more veiled racism.
Survivor, the real game.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. But again, I think it depends on. I think now we're seeing more and more conflict. We're seeing people that don't belong in this world, having an effect on the reality. And we can see how strong, I think this episode partially showed us how strong Wanda's influence is, even on people that are breaking into this place. Because Geraldine, the black woman who is possibly a sword agent, she's even said in that like first or second episode, I don't know what I'm doing here. That's probably because she went in with a purpose, probably to save Wanda or like do something, and then got overtaken. She got folded into this reality, because you have to fit in. Everyone has to fit into their place.
Now I may be wrong. I think Marvel has confirmed this, that Geraldine is actually what's her name?
Monica LeBeau.
Yeah. Thank you.
Rambo.
Monica Rambeau, yeah. Who was first introduced in the Captain Marvel movie, of course.
So it's a good chance that she is working with
Sword.
Sword, yeah, some sort of, especially because, again, in the background of all of this, we still have things from the movies. We still have the Skrulls. We still have Secret Invasion, possibly. We still like all these different things, because I mean, Samuel L. Jackson, Fury wasn't even Fury. He was being played by a Skrull imposter while Fury was up like on some battle station in space. So it's like, does that have anything to do with this, or does that have to do with the multiverse of madness or some sort of invasion? Like, where does that fit in? Do you think that has anything to do with this? Anyone? Does anyone? I don't know. I'm just asking. Do you think like the Secret Invasion, the Skrulls? Do you think that has anything to do with WandaVision?
I read a theory that the entire village is secretly Skrulls. I don't know that I put a lot into that, but that's the theory. It was published today because I was looking at it this morning, and it was that was the reason that when the neighbors were talking and they were trying to communicate division, but they couldn't actually come right out and say, "Hey, we're Skrulls." That was a theory that these are. But I personally think that was more of them trying to say we're figments of her imagination. We're not real.
I heard a crazier one than both of those, which I kind of like. Which is he was about to say everyone here is dead.
Oh,
everyone here is dead. All the people that live there, Vision, everyone except Wanda and. Except for Geraldine, because she broke in, and that's why they're like, she doesn't belong here, she doesn't have a house. But everyone who does belong there is actually there because they're dead.
Well, that raises another interesting theory then. What if this is actually taking place in between Infinity War and Endgame, and this is her time in the Mind Stone? This is what.
In the box? What's in the fucking box?
What's in the yes? No, David. I'm sorry. I had to. I was like,
No, you're fine.
I didn't mean to cut you off though.
To understand, this actually all takes place 25 years after Endgame.
Ooh.
That would blow
Wow.
my mind.
That's a long time.
Well,
I don't think so.
hang on. That theory of yours, Chris, that crazy, insane theory that you kind of like may hold some weight, because remember what I said earlier, the House of M storyline, she starts the alternate reality because she loses her children. And if everybody in this reality is dead,
And so would her children.
Or her
then
children.
the children don't live. Ergo, she's recreated them in her world in a rapid time frame to fill a void, and boom.
You have just entered the scary door. The narrator is hard to understand, almost like he's chewing or something.
Well, I wonder if, as the episodes go along, if her reality is going to start spilling out into.
What do you think? It's growing like this bubble, like her reality could take over reality.
It kind of goes back to another comic, Phoenix Resurrection, because she kind of did the same thing, and things were getting out of control because her reality was starting to spill out into the real world. So I wonder if, and also the song at the end made me think of that too. So
Interesting. And other people have pointed out there have been, and we haven't mentioned this yet, but there have been references to Mephisto, I don't know how you would say that, and that he could be a part of this. And that, I don't even know. And that also would be another thing, that if he has a heavy hand in this, then that would also, I would say, like, that definitely connects this to like Doctor Strange. When you have, I mean, I don't know who else would be fighting.
I read that theory too, that Mephisto's involved with this, and what they're going off of is in the comics, Mephisto, based on Mephistopheles, the demon. Mephisto manifested himself as animals. And in the first episode, we had the lobster. The second episode, we had the rabbit. This episode, we have the stork. All of which are animals that seem to be outside of a control that Wanda has. So somebody theorized in one thing I read that is, did she make a deal with the devil to live in this world, this alternate reality? And is Mephistopheles in play, which would also bring Loki into the mix, because Loki is the god of mischief. Is it secretly Loki involved with all of this? I would not be surprised if we see Loki, because he has the Tesseract, if he starts popping up in all of the TV shows in his own way at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up in Cap and the Winter Soldier. I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up in the other movies, and why not? He can. He's the god of mischief. It's kind of his deal.
And if you're familiar with the DC universe, it's kind of, there's some villains, like especially Reverse Flash, for instance, who shows up in a lot of different timelines and is a villain to a lot of different people because he can move through time. So if Loki has that kind of ability now, he may be pulling a similar thing where we're going to be seeing him all over the place, pulling all different. And now that's not a time thing. Obviously, it's a space, but him. He's the god of mischief.
It's not a redeemed Loki like we see, where he begins to change in Ragnarok and Infinity War. This is Loki after he just tried to conquer New York.
Right after that.
So it's not, we're not seeing him go, this is, hang on, turn the clock back to bad guy kind of a thing.
Which also, that raises the question on that timeline, because clearly things didn't, it's talking about the time, getting into the nitpicky in the time travel of Infinity War and Endgame is like just asking for trouble. So I'm not going to get into it. I want to go back. All right. So before we go, WandaVision, when she is walking around and doing all the classic ways in sitcoms to like hide a pregnancy, I thought that was hilarious. I thought that was a really nice, again, they're aware of the fact that they're, literally playing on sitcom tropes. So why not go full thing with it? She's like, oh, fruit. And like, she's got a bowl, it's just like, these are things that they actually do. And they still do to this day to hide women's pregnancy when they're actually real pregnant in real life and not in the show. So that to me was like, is that taking it to another level? Are they saying that she's actually pregnant in real life? Like, real reality, they are real. Now we're like, there's 5 different layers of reality now. I'm freaking out. Which one am I in?
If that's the case,
I've been incepted.
Then the 70s episode, I mean, who's to say that wasn't a span of 9 months? But because an episode's only supposed to be 30 minutes long,
it's true.
How much time is passing?
How much time is passing in the real world versus in Wanda World?
We still don't know the rules. Exactly. Wanda World. I like that. Or when you're WandaVision, hence the name of the title, when you're seeing things in WandaVision. Think about back in the day. It's like for the first time in high quality Technicolor. It's like now for the first time in WandaVision reality, just the way you've always wanted it.
Why does Vision have super speed?
I think because he's like, he can do whatever he wants.
Because we needed the show to happen.
His powers were never clearly defined.
That's true. But in the second episode, come on. I mean, he was. Come on, we've seen him in action here. All right, we never see him with flash. Crossing the streams, flash-like super speed. But in the second episode, he shuffles the deck of cards very, very quickly. But in this episode, he's all over the place at super speed. And it's never mentioned, it's never brought up, but suddenly he's faster than a speeding bullet. And
he shows no concern for other people
finding out
to do that because he's good at work.
It's a TV show. The doctor even says at the end of this episode is like, as long as we actually walk this time, because he literally carried that guy all the way. It's not like they erased his memory, but again, this is like a TV show. So by the end of the episode, everything's
hunky dory.
Happy ending.
And it ends how it began. But
it might not be his ability. He might be running at a different speed than Wanda. Maybe.
And it is, I think, it's part of just his like superpoweredness. Like he has superpowers.
Yeah,
so,
he
like,
has superpowers.
He can do superpowered stuff. So like that's what they're just like. We need him to be super fat. Now he's super fast. We need him to be foiled by gum. He's foiled by gum. Whatever the episode needs, he is there.
I've got something. Who else is really quick and very important to Wanda?
Somebody
What if Vision is not just Vision, but Vision is being mixed up with her brother? That's why she's always also bringing up her brother lately in the episodes. Because Vision is a mix of Vision and Quicksilver.
Ooh.
The people that she loves.
Yeah.
She lost
that she's lost, yeah.
Maybe that's going on.
Bringing Quicksilver back in the show.
Well, that might be it. Maybe at the moment it's Vision, but maybe there's some disconnect and it becomes Quicksilver. Because you've mentioned how there could be a Quicksilver from another dimension. Maybe Vision ends up being that Quicksilver. It could get really complicated, but it could be stuff like that happening.
Well, yeah, because there's a mutant Quicksilver. Again, we're talking about the multiverse of madness, so anything could happen there. The multiverse, that's why they've, when you heard those rumors about like Tom Cruise playing Iron Man, they're not talking about Tom Cruise taking over the role of Iron Man. They're talking about in multiverse of madness to show that they're in a different reality, that this is the Iron Man there, because they're, and people are like, no, Robert Downey Jr. or nothing. And I'm just like, if they had Robert Downey Jr. play the part of it in another universe, then you wouldn't get the point across that you're in a different universe. We get that you love Robert Downey Jr. No one's trying to take that away from anyone.
In a world.
The thing with quick shuffling of cards, I can't remember, but doesn't Quicksilver also do that in another film? I might be wrong there. I just remember something. I could be getting mixed up there, but yeah, with the speed, I definitely think it's something to do with Quicksilver and not just Vision.
Now we got to go back and watch Age of Ultron.
I'm already there.
Well, maybe Vision has super speed as well, but I just remember Vision more as like the guy that can float.
Right. Changes density.
Pietro helped create Vision, as you can see right there. He's the one who pulled all the plugs out so then it could get shocked. And there's Vision again holding the Mjolnir.
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 Mew.
So Vision obviously worthy to hold Mjolnir, or is like, well, elevator. If you put the hammer in an elevator goes up. Elevator machine. Elevator's not worthy. I'm going to miss these conversations about.
Maybe you can pick it up because he is part machine and it doesn't work for machines.
And he's got the mind. I mean,
and he's part Infinity Stone.
I like to think of it because like he was actually worthy, like, you know, as part of their, it's like they needed to be able to defeat Ultron. They needed to team up with Vision to do it. Vision didn't know how else to show them, and he's literally just at that point kind of like still a machine. After all, I was born yesterday. You know, so like you're so naive. You know, I was like, that's part of the thing that I liked about him, because he's like, you're created by the Mind Stone, so like you have like infinite knowledge, but he doesn't. He clearly doesn't. He doesn't even understand himself. Very, very interesting character. And
going back to still dead. Going back to my theory about the whole thing with Quicksilver, what's not to say that voice is also a Quicksilver?
Which voice?
So you know when we heard on the radio, it's like Wanda who's doing this to you.
Well, I think they confirmed that one was actually the agent.
Agent.
Is it? I didn't know about it being confirmed.
There was no Sokovian accent, so it's either Quicksilver without the. That was an American accent.
I was just gonna say Wanda has an American accent in this, so what's stopping a different Quicksilver?
I don't think we've seen anything else in the show yet that talks about Quicksilver up until this.
Yeah,
and I think that's part of the reason that it's such a big deal. Also, we haven't even seen anything else. Again, like someone else said, in the movies or anything. He died, and that was basically it that we've heard. Like she was trying to, I think, put that behind her or not. She was also a villain during that movie, and then she became an Avenger. So, like, try not to dwell on like, oh yeah, when I was helping destroy the world. But now she's also lost Vision. So, like, obviously, trying to save the world, even if you succeed, hasn't worked out so well for her personally.
Mm.
Suck it up, Buttercup, right? Stop creating alternate dimensions that are ruining lives, or maybe. We don't even know. We don't even know yet. Again, what are the rules? No idea. How fast the time travel out here versus in there? Does that have anything to do with it? Are you about to introduce mutants into reality? Again, maybe that is part of it. Maybe that's why they're so concerned about this bubble of reality, is because it's threatening reality.
Can I please, fanboy, secretly hope that as Doctor Strange is coming through a portal to get into her reality, he's followed by Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier? please make this happen, because now you have. Well, they've already established, and they would have to retcon that because they didn't have access to the rights of the XMen and the mutants at the time they did Age of Ultron, that they are experiments, not mutants.
Fine, just get Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, and he can say something about which timeline, McAvoy or Stewart.
McAvoy or Stewart. I'm so confused.
Secretly, WandaVision's just going to open up a portal. This is Deadpool.
And then it's Deadpool killed from Marvel Universe. And then it can start fresh.
He just shows up, shoots alternate version Wanda. Wanda, you're dreaming. Pop, pop. Come out of this. Pop, pop.
I know what you're thinking. But my boyfriend told me this was going to be a Disney movie. Well, guess what, kids? Okay. Does anyone have any other final thoughts on WandaVision, this episode, any other episode, anything else before we
People just
wrap
need to
up?
give it a go.
Give it a chance? Absolutely, I agree. As soon as I saw the comments after the first week, I was like, "It's a mini series. It's not. You gotta wait." And it's not even like a regular. It's not even like a regular sitcom where each episode is self-contained. Even though it's playing off sitcoms, the full story is 9 episodes.
I was gonna say I think it's gonna be one of those things when it finally does get to the end and everything is revealed to be whatever it is. People are gonna sit back and go, oh, "Of course, it all makes sense now, and it's great." I'm gonna have to go back and watch all of it to catch all the little hints and clues and everything else. This was amazing. It was great. It was an awesome thing.
Do you guys think if Mephisto is involved, do you think he might be after the babies, Tommy and Billy, who would eventually be Wiccan and Speed?
It's possible.
Cricket?
I mean, the canon's
The
canon's been introduced and the groundwork has. See, here's the thing: that the groundwork has been laid to go either down the House of M storyline, or to go down a storyline involving them as Wiccan and Speed, or to go a whole other direction altogether. I think it's too soon to call it. I think we need to see. I think we'll know more when we see what age they are and if they have powers in the next time we see them. If that's already manifested.
I wonder if they're kind of like combining storylines.
Maybe it ties
them and Phoenix Resurrection and whatever else there might be out there that could work into this show.
You know, they certainly could. I wouldn't be surprised either if they were trying to work some sort of Phoenix storyline into this, because God knows Fox has screwed up the Phoenix storyline at least twice in the past 10 years. So MCU's probably not like, we got to get on that Phoenix storyline. They're probably like, let's just let that be for a while and take what we need from it and throw it in here. I wouldn't. You might be absolutely right on that. And that would be a good place to pull some elements from without really having to worry about hurting the property that you're kind of borrowing from. A, because that sort of thing, again, is all over comics. And B, because I do think we are going to see mutants soon in Disney, in the MCU, but I don't think they're going to be going for that Phoenix storyline again, because again, they did that too many times badly.
I think
that was the worst thing that Fox did, I think, with the mutants, was both times they did it. I was like, how do you get
it wrong twice?
And even the first one had, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch." You had that in the movie, and it still wasn't that good of a movie. I'm like, how did you do that? How did you do it? Mysteries.
I fully expect that at the end of this, she's going to be the one that tears the universe asunder, and that she is the reason we're introduced to the multiverse of madness. Because Strange, his whole thing is to protect the universes and the alternate realities. So if we're asking, what is the universe of madness? Maybe we're seeing a very small glimpse of it from an Omega level mutant, if we can still call her that. And it's getting worse and it's peaking. And we see her making drastic decisions. She's rapidly getting pregnant. She's constantly trying to alter the timeline. She's now more rapidly trying to expel everything. It's building. It peaks with her ripping the whole universe a new one. And now Doctor Strange shows up and he's trying to get her to stop it.
And I think I don't think we'll see Doctor Strange in the show, but I kind of have an inkling that we might hear his voice, like he's trying to contact her mentally somehow, or maybe through Agnes, because him and Agnes have worked together too in the comics.
What if that was him on the radio?
No, I think it's been verified. It was Agent Wu
from Ant-Man.
Oh,
yeah.
And I don't think he would be coming through the radio. He is a radio star, and video will kill him.
We're not in the 80s yet. Just wait. We're not in the 80s.
We're getting there. Rush.
Next week.
So one thing that did get brought up, and because you're showing this clip, it reminded me one of the first things Strange, when the Ancient One pushes him out of his body and into the spirit realm, one of the first things he encounters is a butterfly, and he touches it, and it sends him on this trip through all of the different universes in the multiverse. Remember that?
Did it show that already on this clip? Or
It did. It's cut just before it happened.
Okay.
But you had the butterflies reintroduced and that wasn't just something being animated the way she's animated the vacuum cleaner and she's caused the crib to build itself. She took inanimate objects and made them living, and the first thing she did that to were butterflies. So do we have a connection there?
And she takes one off
of also on the calendar in the first episode.
There.
Yeah, here.
There it is.
And this is a music video that I made to the song Super Unknown.
I was really hoping it would be to I Need a Hero by Bonnie Tyler.
What? Just because everyone puts that clip to everything always? No, actually. I listen to music and then I get inspired to actually make something real instead of just putting that to everything. No offense to people that put that to everything. But,
You just called them all out. It's fine.
screw you guys. No, it's a good tactic. I mean, but it's not like no one's surprised by it. I literally, that's the song Supernatural. And I listened to it and I started seeing scenes from Doctor Strange. So that's why I made that music video. When I made the other one that we were watching, Dreams, I was listening to that by Beck and I started seeing things. So when I start seeing things in my head when I'm listening to music, I make the music video. I don't just go, oh, I'll put I Need a Hero to that.
Chris, I have to ask, are you living in Chris Vision with all of this?
I am. That's oh my god. No.
Watch it. He's going to rewind you and make you re-say something.
I think that's a great idea. You're doing wonderful.
It's Chris Vision.
That will never not be funny.
And so also, I just quickly wanted to say what would happen if the Punisher got involved in WandaVision.
My gun. Oh. Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Wow.
There you go. That's basically the Punisher. Then, of course, if the Hulk got in there.
The Golden God! I am untethered and my rage knows no bounds!
Look out for that guy. He's getting angry. Anyway. I think that's it for us today. On Geek News Now Live, we were talking about WandaVision. We'll be back. I plan on doing this every Monday, as long as the episodes are coming out, we can talk about it the Monday after they come out. That gives people time to watch them, maybe even once or twice, and then form an opinion, and then come here and hang out with us and talk about it. So, I want to thank all my wonderful panelists for being here today. They're all wonderful members of the Geek News Now team in some form or another, and we're here to bring you all the different wonderful videos and news and memes and great stuff that you enjoy, that we enjoy. That's why we're here. That's why you're here. That's why we're here, I guess. Anyway,
Men, we don't know what we did.
Hello, Peter. What's happening?
I don't know what's happening, so that's the end of the broadcast. We'll see you next time, everybody. Say
Bye.